Thank you, Councillor Mannion. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the sunny southeast and to Tramore in County Waterford. Just to locate Tramore on the map of Ireland, it's down in the southeast here in County Waterford, and that's the extent of the county. So as you can see, Tramore is to the east of the county, with Waterford City about 16 kilometres to the north, and with our Ailing Airport about 6 kilometres to the northeast. Looking more closely then at the town map, you can see it's an extensive bay, and the town is located right on the water's edge. That is the 3-kilometre beach, a magnificent beach, with a natural lagoon at the back. So it's a place of natural beauty. The town itself is to the northeast, and it's on a very steep incline, very steep topography, and the town steps right up. So it's got a southeasterly aspect. So anywhere you're in the town, you're open to the sunlight and open to the panoramic view of the town. Now that's the potential. I'm talking about the potential, but there are issues which I will introduce you to. Tramore itself, Tramore, the name, big strand, self-explanatory. It was a Victorian seaside town. Originally it was a small fishing village, and then the arrival of the railway in 1853 led to the expansion of the town, and then it became a very large tourist destination, and latterly a satellite town for Waterford because it was so close. Tourism is its main industry. Water sports and all outdoor sports, and of course the amusements beside the beach. They're not as extensive as they were, but they're still present. Lest you think that Tramore is always blue skies and a balmy sea, this is it in winter, so it does have its charm in winter as well. So looking at the town itself, you can see that it steps right up, and you can see the very prominent Catholic Church dominating all, and the Church of Ireland is out of screenshot, but it's not as high, the spire is not as high. Now the issues, I'm going to talk about the issues of the town, namely that it doesn't actually have a town heart as such. The old town is there, the old Victorian town. But as the tourist product developed, another centre developed at the lower end of the town. So when tourists arrived at the bottom town, because of the steep hill, they were disinclined to go right up into the heart of the town. And if that wasn't enough, then about 10 years ago, a commercial centre and hub developed to the west. So that housed the banks, the supermarkets, the Lidls, the Aldis, the primary care. So everybody went there. So the poor, misfortunate centre of the town was divested of its need and of its use, and all the energy just drained out of it. And that was coupled with it being so close to Waterford that people lived in Tramore, commuted to Waterford City, and spent their money in Waterford. So in order to introduce the community projects, I really have to bring it back to 1999, where the population was 7,684 then. And then after that, there was about a 25% increase in population. So Tramore became the fastest growing town for a while. Back in 99, these were the images. This was the image of the main street. Now, it's hard to believe that that's actually a coloured photograph, but it was grey and drab, and it was, unloved, unappreciated, and forgotten about. And like Garrett, I actually came back to Tramore at that time, and it's my hometown. And I was so disillusioned, I was disappointed, and I was saying, why is this happening to my lovely town when it has so much potential? One of the other big problems was that one of the largest Coast Guard buildings in the country was located in Tramore, and this was the condition of it in 99. It was originally the location of the Coast Guard, the Regional Coast Guard, and then the Garda Síochána took it over, and they vacated it in '88, and it was left just vacant. And it fell into disrepair, and it was vandalised and burnt, and this was the condition it was in '99. So at that stage, I was part of the architectural department in Waterford Institute of Technology. I worked there at the time, and a group of us got a very, very small tranche of money to do a research project. So in our spare time, we worked on revitalising it. And at the time, the Irish Times had a section, I don't know if you remember it back then, where they dealt with regions. And every Tuesday, they used to do the South East. And for some reason, they focused in on what we were doing, and they charted our progress. So what we did was we surveyed all of the buildings, and we photographed them, and we came up with proposals. And then we decided we're going to have a public meeting, and all we had were 2 projectors. In one projector we had as the town looks, and in the other projector what it could look like. And the reaction was so extraordinary that we said, gosh, we really have to harness this energy and this enthusiasm. We have to do something about it. And that's when Tramore Development Trust was born. Now, it wasn't born overnight. There was a lot of hard slog to get the trust up and running. But we had one very good, fortunate coincidence. When we were advertising the public meeting, we put up notices and posters on shop fronts, and a consultant, Alan Caldwell, he was a Scottish consultant in community development, happened to see the poster. He was holidaying in Tramore at the time, and rang me up and said, would you be interested in talking to me? And I said, of course. Went over to Scotland and saw what Scotland was doing, and they were just so ahead of us at the time. And community development was so developed that we said, look, could you help us? Could you be our facilitator and our mentor? And he was, and really, he was fantastic. And only for him, we wouldn't be where we are. So suffice it to say, what is the Trust? It is an independent voluntary community development organisation. It's limited company by guarantee, similar to the town structures that you talked about, Colin and Garrett. We formed it in 2000. It has charitable status, and it was the first community trust in Ireland. And it's completely based on the Scottish model. So the Scottish model is that, no group of people have a mandate to come along and say what goes on in the town. You have to get support from the grassroots, and that was very important, that we got buy-in from the community. We had no right as 3 architects to come along and say this is what the town should be. We needed to hear what was needed by the community and for the community. So we organised a series of facilitation groups, workshops, and this went on for quite a while, and we came up with the community plan. Now, that wasn't overnight. It took us 2 years to develop a community plan. And at the end of it, you'll say, well, look, it's only an A3, drawing, size of paper, front and back, but that took 2 years. And it was the best thing we ever did, because we're still using it. That was, 16 years ago, and we still are using it and referring it. Now, we review it every so often. What did the community plan do? It set out what we're about, what our objectives are, what our mission statement is, and it was bringing vibrancy back into the heart of the Victorian town centre. With the community and with the facilitation groups, we identified themes, and the themes are community facilities, youth and children, business and enterprise, arts and culture, older people and environment. And under that, we looked at, right, what is needed? What do those user groups need? What's missing? How can we instill pride and enthusiasm into developing our town and supporting our town? So under each of these themes, we set out what we were going to do and the projects we wanted to invest in. So really, the fact that so much care and attention was put into this plan, it is still relevant today. Now, we banged our heads off the wall and said, why is this taking so long? And we thought we were really dragging our heels, but now in hindsight, I can see it was one of the best things we ever did. And I'd really encourage people to work on their community plans. Right, what did we do then? When we decided what we needed, the three of us looked at our building stock and we assessed the derelict properties that were in the town. And once we had the derelict properties, we looked at the community uses that were needed and we assigned a use to each derelict property, and then we set about trying to get funding. Right, we said, okay, we need to channel our energies and be able to focus our energies and to define an actual boundary as to where we're going to focus our attention. So we actually designated an area within the town, where we were going to focus our attention and our energies and our finance. So this is another key point. We looked at nodal points within that town centre. It's a bit like, acupuncture points in a body. If the relevant point is pressed, it energises that point and it heals the whole body. Similar in towns and cities, there are these acupuncture points, and very often they coincide with where heritage buildings were because they served very relevant uses, in our past. And if sufficient care and attention and money is applied to these places again, it can re-energise that space and literally heal the town centre again. And that was the logic behind where we were coming from. Now, looking at these points, that was the main street, and we did a painting scheme, but I'm not going to talk about that. And we did a sheltered housing scheme for the elderly. Now, I'm going to focus on 3 heritage projects that we got involved in, and they come under community facilities. So the obvious one was the Coast Guard. That was dear to our hearts, and this is it today. And how did we do that? It's an OPW building, and we said, right, we need to look and consult with the OPW. The minister at the time, the junior minister who in charge of the OPW, we contacted him and said, look, this is what we want to do. And the fact that we had the community plan and done all our research, it opened doors for us. And his response was, go off, come up with a scheme, come back to me, and I'll think about it. We went away, worked on a proposal and a sketch design for it, met him again, and he said, I'll do my best. And lo and behold, he did. And we ended up getting 3 million, or at least the OPW invested 3 million into the project. There was a fantastic architectural team that worked on it, and they were so responsive and very good. The outcome is that it was split into 2, and the right-hand part houses the Irish Coast Guard, so that is the state presence there. But there was an undertaking that, as part of the restoration, that there would be a section of the building that would be purely designated for community use if we took responsibility for it. So we have responsibility for half of that building. Now, that's fairly considerable space and fairly considerable responsibilities. So we said yes, and then went back and chattered and bit our nails and said, what have we got ourselves into? But we were committed to going ahead with it. So what is it run as? It is run as a community arts centre, because we didn't have a cultural arts centre. We had no place for running exhibitions or having music venues or yoga rooms apart from halls in schools and that. It is also a community cafe and a conference centre, and it's our office space. That's where we're based in the Coast Guard. At night time, it's a music venue. And you can have classes like this flower arranging class there. And this is another thing that happened quite organically. People, when they were going to classes and looking at the walls, they were saying, listen, I'm making jewellery and I'm using shells and things like that. Can I exhibit my stuff? Or I'm keeping bees. Can I exhibit my honey and all of that? So it grew organically. So we said, right, this can be a craft centre for local artisan crafts and products. So we're trying to develop that. So that's what the building is used for. At the moment, it has 2 full-time posts, 7 community employment posts, and 5 part-time posts. So that's what the operation sustains. So from a position of, this is how it looked in '99, this is what it is now. So there was a visual transformation, and so that gave the Trust dynamic impetus for us. Now, on foot of that then, the Quaker meeting, the Friends Society, or the Quakers as we know them as, had a meeting place in Tramore, and because of their reducing congregation, they said, look, we just don't use this building, we can't afford to keep it, we've seen what you've done in the Coast Guard, would you consider taking on this building? We had no money to do it, so we looked at ways of getting funding. So what we did was, we knew that the Department of Justice were looking for pilot projects for getting funding for after schools programs, so we did that, but that didn't work. So now it's run as an adult centre for special needs, and that's how it's run at the moment. Now, the next project is the Lafcadio O'Hearn Gardens. Lafcadio O'Hearn is a writer in, we lived in Japan, and he's a very famous writer. He's a bit like what Joyce is to us, or Kavanagh. He's on every curriculum in Japan, and he lived in Tramore during the summer. So we found out about that, and when his great-grandson came to Tramore to visit his great-grandaunt's grave, we had a neglected park in the town, which was derelict. So we got funding from the Japanese, a commemorative trust, and Waterford County Council, and we developed the gardens. So the gardens actually are in his memory or honour his life. So I'm quickly going to go through what the gardens are. So as you come into the garden, there's the Victorian garden, transition garden. He went to America, and then he went to Greece before he went to Japan. So the garden charts the stages of his life. And then we come to the Japanese section, where we transition over into the Japanese part of the garden. And this is the tea garden, and now we're building a tea house. And this is the Zen garden, where the journey's end, it comes to the journey's end. And this is the bust of Lafcadio O'Hearn that the city of Matsue in Japan gave. On foot of that, the UK, Bradford University and the UK, plus with WIT, want to do environmental acoustics research, and they've chosen Tramore as a place for a tranquility trail. Because they felt with a Japanese garden and a serene place in the town, and then the town centre, they want to look at how people react in tranquil spaces and then in town centres. So we've got funding for this trail, where people take the trail and then they answer a questionnaire as a result. This is only a draft, as you can see. There are sort of comments on the page. And this is just about to be launched at the end in August. Now, to conclude, we were very fortunate to get funding from the Heritage Council, and we're very, very grateful for the Heritage Council to look at the impact of our heritage projects over the last 18 years. Now, we could evaluate them from an economic point of view, but we couldn't evaluate it from a social point of view. So we employed a facilitator to hold workshops and to meet people who use the buildings and the community of Tramore. So we called it the social curtilage. You know the way you've got the architectural curtilage for protected structures, this is the social curtilage. So I'm going to end on just some comments and quotes from people who gave of their comments. We didn't deal with it. It was an objective person, and we were quite blown away by the power of some of the comments. In relation to the Coast Guard station, This was one of the comments. Before, its uses were about our protection, our physical protection. Now it's about our social protection. It continues to keep us safe mentally and socially. I feel a sense of home here. The building is good for personal health and the town's health. It lifts my spirits. And the last one, I feel part of the community. This is a woman who supplies bread to the cafe, and she was always very intimidated about looking at exhibitions. So she said, I feel part of the community, the arts that I never thought I'd belong to. The art on the walls is always changing, and the music, concerts, exhibitions feel right in this building, as if they belong, and so do I. For the gardens, I feel protective of the gardens as well as being proud of them. I like that other people, national and international visitors, want to come here and see them, but I really like that they are ours, us the local people, and I do feel that they belong to us. The other person said, it has transformed what was a derelict and actually frightening place into a peaceful and welcoming space. It is a healing space, a precious space. It helps the mental health of the whole town somehow. And the last one then is the reaction from the people with special needs who use the meeting house building. They, because they couldn't respond to the interview, we worked on an arts project where they could communicate their views, and they were asked to give one word and a colour that represented the building for them. So I'm going to end on this sheet because I think this sheet says it all. So if you just look at just the comments and the colours, and we were just blown away by those words. That was their reaction to how they responded to the building. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.